Hello everyone. Over the past few weeks, I have played 5 games against a viewer of mine. This viewer is rated around 600 rapid rating, whereas myself is rated around 2100 rapid rating. They were all daily games, meaning we each had about 3 days to make each of our moves, and in today's video, I'm going to take you through each of the 5 games. So let's start with game number 1. I was black, they were white, and they started with pawn to d4, the queen's pawn opening, and I actually played pawn to f5 here. This is the Dutch defense, and white played in a very London type of way with bishop to f4 here. If you don't know the London, it is pawn to d5 and then bishop to f4, so we kind of got the same thing, except I played pawn to f5 instead. So here I played knight to f6, very typical for the Dutch, and they developed their knight to c3. Now, I assume what they're going for is a kind of Jobava London, which is a type of London where you go knight to c3 first, and here I simply played pawn to e6. My plan here doesn't change. I'm going to go bishop to e7, I'm going to castle, I'm just going to have a very nice position, but here they played knight to b5. And they are getting here what I like to refer, and a lot of people like to refer as one-move-itis, where what they see here is they're making a threat here with a fork. However, I can simply just go pawn to d6. Now fork is prevented, and I already have a slightly better position here because white, instead of playing useful moves, is wasting time making one-move threats. So now they go pawn to e3, which is actually a good move, opening up their bishop. Now I develop my own bishop, put pressure on their knight here, and they play bishop takes on d6. This is not a good move. I assumed what they were thinking is that after I capture back, they could take with their knight, and I would have to move my king up, which is very ugly. However, I think they just completely missed that my bishop also covers that, and I just captured. And on move 6, I am already up a piece. So this is going pretty well. They trade again. I simply capture back. Now they develop their knight to f3. And I am up a piece here, but they have one pawn in return, and this game is by no means over just yet. So now I castle, and they play bishop to c4. They're all good moves. They're doing exactly what they should be doing here. Now I put my queen out to c7, attack their bishop here, and they definitely make a bit of a mistake here with pawn to b3 to defend. And the reason this is a bad move is that now their dark squares here are extremely unsafe, and I take advantage of that immediately with pawn to b5 here. Defended by my own bishop, I attack theirs, and so they have to back it up. They go to e2, and now my queen gets in. I play queen to c3 check. I check their king as well as put pressure on the rook, and here they had to play either knight back to d2 or king to f1, but instead they play queen up to d2. Big mistake because their queen had a very important job of defending the rook, and now I can go ahead and just capture that. They block the check with bishop to d1, and now I do exactly what I need to do. I need to finish my development, and so I go knight to c6, they castle, and now because I don't want to deal with this rook and any funny business with that, I simply go ahead and capture the pawn here. Now they play pawn to c3. Definitely a mistake because if you are down a lot of material like they are here, trading queens is probably about the last thing you should do because now that material advantage is going to be much more prevalent. And here, the fastest winning plan, which I'm a bit proud of myself, I found, is to go pawn to a5. And essentially, go pawn to a4, create a passed pawn, and go pawn a3, pawn a2, and promote. And they play pawn to f3 here with an idea of pushing pawn to e4, which is a good plan. The problem here is that they're down 8 points of material, so it kind of just doesn't really matter that much. I go pawn a4. They push e4 in the center, and I just continue pushing. Pawn a3, they capture, and I could capture back, but honestly, I don't need to. I just play pawn to a2, and now this pawn is a real troublemaker, so they have to prevent me from queening by going bishop to e2, but I just queen anyways. Captures, I capture back, checking their king, And the engine gives knight to f1 as the best move here, which is what they played, but I think king to f2 is much better, since the problem with knight to f1 is that now your knight is stuck back here and it's pinned, so it really just cannot do anything. Now I immediately take advantage of the fact their pawns are kind of weak by playing pawn to b4 here. Now they play pawn to c4, pushing up, but this pawn is simply hanging out. I go ahead and capture that. Now they play bishop to d3. I assume trying to defend this, but it really doesn't matter, and I don't even really care about capturing that pawn. I can just go ahead and capture on b3 here with my knight, and now I have a second passed pawn. They run their king out to f2, getting their knight out of this annoying pin here. Now I play rook to a2 check, and they run their king up to g3, which is a serious mistake, as in this endgame here, I have two rooks, two knights, and a bishop. So a king on g3, that can get real dangerous. Now I go ahead and capture on f5 here. Now they get their knight out, e3. And here, seeing that their king is really weak, I play knight to h5 check. Check their king. They run their king up to h4, which is getting really dangerous now. And I move my knight to f4 here. Now I'm attacking this bishop as well as putting pressure on this pawn here. And after bishop to c2, this is kind of overkill, but I have a nice tactic here. Knight takes on g2. And if they capture, which they did in the game, then now I go ahead and capture the bishop, and I've ended up winning a pawn. And the rest of this game is pretty straightforward. They play knight to e3. Now I play rook to c3. Attack the knight. They move their knight. I go ahead and capture the pawn. They move their knight to b6, attack my bishop. Now I get my knight that is over on the queen side into the game by playing knight to c5 and simultaneously defending. They move their knight to the center. Now I play pawn to f4 here, opening up my bishop and my rook to go ahead and see this square. They can play one check. I just move over. It means nothing. Now they go pawn to h3. I simply capture. King to g5 now. And I did have an immediate checkmate with knight to e4 here, but I missed that. Instead, I played pawn h6 check, king moves, and now rook up to f6 is checkmate. So that is game number 1. Now let's look at game number 2. So I had the white pieces this time. I played pawn to e4, and they actually played pawn to d5. The Scandinavian defense, I hope they got inspired by my video on the Scandinavian. I captured, they captured back. Now I played knight to c3 here. I attack their knight, or what am I saying? I attack their queen with my knight, and they move their queen back to d8, which isn't terrible, but it's just not a very good square. It's very passive. So now I play bishop to c4, develop my bishop, and they play pawn to e6, which isn't a very good move. They should try to get their bishop out first and then play pawn to e6. And so they do it first. Now this bishop is just kind of sad. So I play pawn to d4, strike in the center, not really strike, but take a lot of the center squares. Now bishop to b4, pinning, and I don't really want to let them capture and ruin my pawn structure, so I play knight to e2, defending. Now they go knight to c6, add some pressure here. I just defend it, bishop to e3, knight to f6, castles now, and I play queen up to d3. This is a small mistake because now they have knight to a5, attacking my bishop, and they're actually going to get my bishop for their knight, which is a bit of a positive for them, but instead they play pawn to g6. This move, I assume what they're trying to do is prevent any shenanigans from my queen ever getting here, but the problem is now all the dark squares around their king are extremely weak, and you'll see those are very important at the end of the game. So I move my rook over, rook a to d1. Now they play pawn to e5 here, striking in the center, and I push up pawn to d5, attacking this knight, but this is actually a bit of a mistake because of bishop to f5 here. Attacking my queen, I would have to move it away, and now they would get knight to a5 once again, and this is about an even position here, whereas before I had an advantage, but they made a pretty major mistake here. They played bishop takes on c3. Now they no longer have that because I can capture and get my queen out of the way of their bishop ever attacking, and they play bishop to g4 here. Now they're pinning my knight to my rook, but that knight is both defended, and also their knight is just hanging here, and I just go ahead and capture it. I assume their idea was to capture here, and then get this fork, but first off, that's defended, and also my rook is now attacking their queen, so they have to move their queen over. They move to e7 here. Now a capture on b7. Attack their rook, they move over, and now we go pawn to h3. Just tells bishop, ask it what is it going to do. They back their bishop up to f5 now, and I play bishop to b3. My idea here was to prepare bishop to c5 and get this skewer here, but I actually could have just played it immediately, because if they capture, then now I get bishop takes on f7 check, and I win their queen. So that's a nice little thing right there. But I back my bishop up, and now they capture on b7, which just fails. Bishop c5. I get the skewer now successfully. They play knight to e4, which is a good attempt trying to add some confusion, but I simply capture on e7. Now they capture my queen, and very important little note here, you do not want to capture this rook, because then they can take this knight with check. I move over, and now they take on f8, and I'm only up 2 points of material here, whereas if instead I play just knight takes back on c3 here, I am up 6. So my bishop's still attacking the rook, they move it over, but now my rook slides in up to d8, pinning here and forcing a trade. They capture, I capture back, now they play rook to b4. Honestly, I do not understand this move, I'll just be honest, because that just hangs another pawn, and I happily capture it. And after they play pawn to e4, I now move my rook to d1, take control of the open file, and remember what I said earlier about those dark square weaknesses? If I can get my bishop here, this square, then rook up to d8 would actually be a checkmate, and that is exactly what happens. They push up to e3, I just go ahead and capture it, that's a free pawn, but now they play rook to b7. They attack my bishop, but I move it to e4. Now they play rook to e7, attack it again, but now simply rook to d8 check. King cannot run here. Rook moves, rook captures, checkmate. That is game number 2. Now let's look at game number 3. Now, I was black in this game. They played pawn to d4, pawn d4 here. And instead of going pawn to f5, I tried pawn to d5 here. They went knight to c3. This is the Shigorin variation, and it is a legitimate opening, but it's not that great because you immediately block your c-pawn, and usually in d4 setups, that c-pawn either wants to go to c3 or to c4, not be stuck behind on c2. So I play e6, good move here, preparing the pawn to c5 push, and now they go knight to b5. I think once again, they're getting that kind of tunnel vision. They want their bishop to come to f4 and to team up on here, but they do the knight first, so I can just go pawn a6. I have to boot the knight back, and now simply c5. I get everything I want, and I already have an advantage here. So they go knight to f3, protecting their center. I go knight to c6, adding more pressure here. They go pawn to e3, now knight to f6, just developing, and they play pawn to e4. This is just a bad move because they push up this pawn, and first off, that's a free pawn, but after I take this pawn, now the other pawn will be hanging as well. So I capture on e4, it's just a free pawn. Now they move knight to g5, attacking this, and I decide to just let them capture back because I can just take on d4. Big trade happens here, and now I go pawn to e5. Now up a pawn, I have a really strong center, and yeah, I already have a decent advantage here. They play bishop to g5, attacking my queen, but that's just not a very good move because I go bishop to e7 here. Now I'm getting more development, and they play bishop to c4. I mean, counters and defenders, they have one defender, I have two attackers, and I simply win a piece like so. And they go queen to f3, which is actually a pretty good move, both defending this pawn that was hanging as well as threatening. Queen takes an f7 check, but here I just castle. My king is now safe and there's no more threats, and they try pawn to h4. Now their idea here is pretty simple. They're going to try and push up and try and get some sort of an attack going, but it just does not work because I have a nice queen to f5 here. offering a queen trade. Obviously, they cannot accept it, so they go queen to g3 here. If they accept the trade, then there's just no attacking chances. Now they're just down 4 points of material with a bad position and no attacking chances at all, which is just sad. So instead, they move to g3, but now I capture on c2. And the reason this move is really good is that now their king has a really hard time deciding where to go. They don't want to castle short because they're pushing pawns on that side and they're trying to attack, but also now that my queen is here, castling long side is just completely prevented. But neither of those ideas really come into fruition because they play queen to g4. I don't really understand this move. I don't think it was a misclick, and it hangs their queen in one move, and I happily capture it. Now they castle, and I capture their other bishop. I don't know what happened, but I'm now up 17 points of material. So that didn't go very well for them. I kind of feel bad, honestly. But they go pawn to f3 here, attack my bishop, I back it up, and now pawn to g4, which is just bad because you really do not want to be pushing the pawns in front of your king, especially when I can so easily start getting my pieces in to attack the king. So I move my bishop to c2 here. They play rook a to c1, pinning, but now I push up, pawn to d3, and if they're not careful, push and promote, and that's actually just completely unstoppable. They try pawn f4, but there's not really much to think about here. Pawn to d2, rook moves over, and now I have a very nice queen to d4 check, checking their king, as well as adding another defender to get this promotion in. Rook to f2 block, promote, captures, they block the check. Now I capture on g4, another check, king moves, now I capture here, check, king moves, now I got my bishop in, so now my queen and my bishop are attacking the king, and they go king to g1 here, allowing the immediate queen to g3 checkmate. So that was game number 3. Now let's go to game number 4 right here. So I was white once again, and we actually got another Scandinavian, pawn e4, pawn to d5, and once again, I trade, and now I go knight to c3 attacking, but they do not play queen back to d8, instead they play queen to a5 here. This is the main line and probably best move, but I surprise them right out of the gate with pawn to b4. This is the Leonhardt gambit, and objectively it's not the best, but practically I have so much fun here, and oftentimes black crumbles immediately. And they actually do exactly that. They play queen to e5 here, which is just a bad move. If they try to prove any advantage or equality, they have to accept the pawn, but by playing this check, I now go bishop to e2, and they really just do not have that much here, and the queen on e5, if anything else, is just going to be a big target for me to attack. They develop their knight, c6, try to attack the pawn, now I develop knight to f3, attack the queen, they move it over to f5, but now I ask them a question. How is this pawn going to be defended after knight to b5? I attack the pawn, and it's very annoying for them to defend it. They have to play queen to d7 here. This is their only attempt to try and survive here, defend the pawn like this, but they try queen to f6, which is a bad move because they're threatening my rook in the corner. Technically, knight takes on c7 is still winning, but I simply play rook over to b1, and the reason that this is so much worse is that now their queen cannot come to d7 to protect, and there's actually no way to protect this pawn unless you move your king over to d8, which is probably what they should have done, but instead they play bishop to f5 here. Now I capture on c7, get the fork, they move over, I capture, and after pawn to e6, I have a nice move here. They are threatening this pawn here with their knight and their bishop, but I have a very nice and tricky pawn to d4. What this move does is it sacrifices this pawn, but it opens up my bishop, and because the king is here and the queen is here, that should be alarm bells ringing in your head for me to go bishop to g5, bishop g5, and pin like this and just win the queen, and they actually fall right for the trap that I envisioned. They capture on b4 with a check, but that doesn't work because I just capture back. They take, and now I get bishop to g5, and this pin completely makes them lost. They can capture on c2 with a check, but I just slide over. King to f1, they have nothing here. They play king to e7. I could not trade immediately because this pin here is just going to stay, but I decided to trade. They take back for their king. Now simply knight to h4. Attacks bishop. Trading more pieces is good for me because I'm up a lot of material. So now knight to h6. Captures. And I could save the knight here, but I rather just capture this one. They capture this. And now I want to get my rook into the game, and the fastest way to do that, because I cannot castle anymore, is pawn to g3, move my king here, and then get my rook into the game like so. They play rook to d8, attack the pawn, but I'm up 8 points of material here. I really do not care about one little pawn. I move my king, they capture, and now rook to d1, and once again, they should not have traded here, but they did. I capture back. And now they play pawn to g6. I mean, they really just do not have much else they can do here. I play check. Nice little fork here. King moves. And once again, they have this thing where they run their king to the center, where they really should just not be doing this because it's very unsafe. I capture. They move their knight to d6 here. Attack my queen. I just capture another pawn. Pawn to f5 now, but I see their king is very unsafe, and I actually have mate and free here with queen to e7 check. King has to move over to h6, and I had a faster mate here with by playing queen to f8 check first. King moves, and now pawn to h4, but I play pawn to h4 first, and that can allow them to delay a little bit with knight to e8. However, they play knight to e4 instead, and now simply queen to f8 is checkmate. Queen checks the king. That square is controlled. This bishop back here also controls this square. Queen here, queen here. That is game number 4. That is the 4th game, and now let's look at the final one, game number 5. So, I was black again. We get pawn to d4. Oh, sorry. It's a little buggy. I can't use my mouse to move the first move. I don't know why it's like that. Pawn d4, pawn d5, and they play pawn to c4, the queen's gambit. I play pawn to e6 here, queen's gambit declined, and they go pawn to g3. A kind of Catalan setup. They're going to develop their knight, develop their bishop, and castle. However, I have actually been learning something against this. I go pawn to c6, knight to f3 here, and now I actually capture the pawn. I accept the gambit, and I'm going to go pawn to b5 and try and hang on to my one pawn advantage as long as I can. They develop their bishop, and now I play pawn to b5, reinforce this, and they try knight to e5 here, immediately adding threats to this, but that is easily defended with bishop to b7. Now they try knight to c3 here. I do have to be a little careful. I can't just play like knight to f6 because then they can capture here. A very nice move. And if I capture back, then here, and I lose my rook, so that's very bad. So because of that, I have to play pawn to a6. That way it is defended like this. Now castles. Now I develop my knight, bishop f4, and bishop to d6. They play pawn to a3, which I don't really understand this move too much. It seems it's kind of like a waste of time, where they probably should have moved their queen out to like c2 instead. Now I castle, and I think they're just getting impatient here because they feel like they cannot do anything, so they play pawn to d5. That is just a full hanging of a pawn. I take it. Now I have a 2-pawn advantage, and this, I have the pyramid of death right here. That's incredible right there. Now they try pawn to a4, try and chip away at this, but now I push up b4, and their knight has to go back either to a2 or b1. They choose knight back to b1, and now I capture on e5. Now I get my other knight into the game. My development is flowing. I'm up 2 pawns, and I have a fantastic position. So they move their bishop back to d4 here. Now I play queen to c7, get my queen out, and they try pawn to f4. What they're doing here is they're really controlling this square and preventing the eventual pawn to e5 push, but the problem with this is that now these squares are all weakened and opened up. I move my rook over, rook f2 c8 here. They move their queen up to d2, and now I play pawn to a5. My pawn is attacked, I defend it, and I think once again they're kind of getting impatient here, and they play pawn to b3. and it looks like a good move. I can't capture, but what I played is actually pawn to c3 here, wedging my pawn up, and after the queen moves, this knight here is dead. I mean, dead in the water. They can't move here, they can't move here, and they can't move here, and those are the only free legal moves. So I've essentially killed this knight, and also the rook behind it. So now I play bishop to a6, attack the queen again, as well as target the weak pawn back here, and they play queen to d1, which is just a bad move because I push up to c2 now. Now the queen is forked, and the knight, they move their queen over, I capture, they capture back with their queen, and now I play queen to c2 here. I could have captured the pawn, but I'd rather offer a queen trade instead. I like endgames. Now they go pawn to e4 here, and before I decide to trade queens or to not trade queens, first off, this is a free rook, so I go ahead and capture that. And now is the decision. I can trade queens here, but what I thought was even better is actually to capture on e4 and keep the ideas of attacking this king alive. Now they play bishop to b5 here, attack this knight. Now I move it over, potentially rotating it also to the king's side. They capture here. I simply take back my knight, and now they go pawn to g4 here. I mean, I really don't understand this. What would have been better is to try and trade and then probably get the rook out somehow. This is just a free pawn, but even if they hadn't played that, I probably would have gone knight to g4 anyways, because after this happens, now these are both massive threats. And the problem is, they go pawn to h3 here, attack my knight, but I have a nice little thing here. I do not move my knight. Instead, I play a check my queen, defended by the knight. King moves over, and now queen to h2, once again defended by this attacked knight, is checkmate. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, do that stuff. Let me know if you want more videos like this, and I will see you next time. Have a fantastic day.